Hey, welcome to the Run for Cover podcast. My name's Bob,
I'm Dane.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Brian.
the classic DJB. Uh, guys, Dane, what are we talking about today?
We had an interview with Nick Hamm, who plays guitar and sometimes backing vocals in Citizen. And we talked to him about their first LP, Youth, which came out June 11th, 2013.
So just past 10 years. We know this because the 10-year anniversary edition came out not long ago. This is a pretty big record. Just because we actually get into it, and I thought the conversation with Nick was excellent. It was really cool. Really down-to-earth guy who was really honest about his feelings with the record and with the band and the time. And I think you can hear that. That's one of my favorite things so far is that in all our conversations, we're catching people giving us kind of like their emotional take on things. And that always resonates. This record to me has always struck me because of the cover art. I'm a little bit of a weirdo with that. An iconic cover really means a lot to me. And I think that Youth certainly has one. Now, Brian and Dane, we didn't really go into your first experiences with Citizen in our conversation with Nick. So why don't we catch those here, Brian?
I first found out about Citizen literally from the signing announce. I'm pretty sure. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that the announce accompanied the turnover split that they did.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe I was interning at the time, and I remember that announcement going up and just being like, "Oh, who are these young bloods?" And then checking it out. That split rocks. I know that Nick feels less strongly about the songs on it based on our conversation, but I remember that, and then just the growth of that band from LP1. I never really didn't really hit me what the energy behind the record was, and I certainly found out. And it's been really, really cool to work with that band on everything that's followed Youth. Definitely a little bit more on recent projects. Glass World, Life in Your Glass World 2021 record, and then Calling the Dogs, which came out last year. I was both pretty involved with like helping them get that off the ground. And yeah, the whole career has been really special.
Dane, how about you? What's your, because especially a fellow Midwesterner, I know we're talking Michigan, Ohio, but there's a lot of love there, right?
For sure, yeah. I mean, pretty similar to Brian. I don't remember. I mean, I was on Tumblr for sure, so it's very possible that
Hold on, Brian. Isolate that. We need a pull quote from Dane. I was on Tumblr for sure. Okay, go ahead.
In the Tumblr trenches. Let's go.
I was definitely in there, and yeah, right around the time that I was interning at RFC. I don't specifically remember if Jeff was talking about them or like what the rumblings were in the office. I don't remember me first finding out about Citizen being on RFC, but I do know that once I was there and we started working with Citizen, we were very fast friends for some of those reasons. We're younger, we're around the same age. They're a little bit younger than me, but yeah, the Midwest connection was huge because at RFC, I was kind of like the token Midwesterner because everybody else is native to New England. So we had that and Midwest metalcore to bond over.
It was the little straw that you had in your mouth all the time. It really threw people off. You had to like once you took it off, they couldn't tell you were from the Midwest anymore.
Yeah, whistling with the tumbleweeds.
So you actually, Dane, also had an opportunity to go out on the road with these guys nascently close to this record, but in some capacity. Is that right?
Yeah, so technically, that Warped Tour that they did 2013 was also the first year that RFC tried to do all of Warped Tour. That's a whole saga in and of itself, but I ended up going out for about half of Warped Tour on the year that Citizen was on. So we were together a lot, but anybody who's been on Warped Tour can tell you that it's, like there's definitely hangs, but it's a pretty chaotic situation to be in. So I was kind of out there doing my own thing. but we hung out a lot and got to know each other. And I kind of talked myself into later going on their first Australian tour in 2015. In zero professional capacity, just because my friends were going to Australia and I also wanted to go there.
So any good stories from Australia?
Stories, I mean, the whole thing was just jumping off of rocks into water and playing shows pretty much. But notably, what we always talk about is that summer, that was just before I stopped eating meat, which was very fortunate because all we ate was Hungry Jack's and McDonald's literally multiple times a day. Not a super advanced palate at that time. You know, this was pre steakhouse swag.
Okay. Yeah. Hey. All right. Well, I mean, look, after our conversation with Nick, outside of a lot of the good music insights, he just seemed like a good hang. He seemed like somebody who'd be fun to go jump off rocks with. And it was interesting because you hear that from a band and people in bands who've been doing it for a long time, but still seem to really enjoy it, you know? And so I don't know, you know, when I hear that, it is my first conversation with Nick ever. I hear that. I hear the way, Jeff, that you interacted with them. It just seems like an easy group of guys to work with and people just to work with in general. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Brian, you are our producer. You really steer the ship here. Any particular gleanings or learnings that you've had in the episode that you want to highlight and tease to the people?
Well, we're still early on this project, but one of the things that's a through line with our conversation with Alex from Basement was just I loved hearing the in the studio anecdotes about them writing some of their, you know, most popular songs or the ones that everyone considers bangers now, but like just being in the studio, being like, yo, this is a hit. And that energy it must feel so exciting. You know, I've never written a hit song in my life. So it would behoove me to feel like if that did happen, if you knew it in the studio, they'd be like, oh, sick.
Yeah, this is a good feeling. Well, without any further ado, I think we should get right to the interview. So everyone, please enjoy this conversation with Nick Hamm from the band Citizen as we discuss the album Youth.
Hey folks, we're going to get to our conversation with Nick in a second. But first, I want to tell you about the Run for Cover Magic Circle. The Magic Circle is a vinyl subscription service for the most dedicated RFC fans. Signing up means getting every new Run for Cover release delivered to your door. Right now, you can sign up for the next 3 releases, the next 6 releases, even the next 12 releases, which would put you well into next year if you were to sign up for that. Every Magic Circle release is pressed on subscriber-exclusive vinyl and includes a hand-numbered Obi strip. Other perks include a dedicated customer service line for your subscription and early downloads for every release that you're going to get. To learn more about the RFC Magic Circle, go to runforcoverrecords.com.
Hey, Nick. Hi. How are you? Welcome. Are you in Toledo as we speak?
Hey, what's going on? I'm actually in Cincinnati. We're playing a show tonight, so we're down here.
I have a really hard time. Maybe it's because I have a geographic mind. I like to register where people are from, what it's about, and we're doing that in pre-production as we're getting ready to record. And Dane dropped a bombshell on us that we need to get into. But first and foremost, Nick, you are from Toledo, Ohio, correct?
I am from Toledo, Ohio.
And that is nascently where our Citizen is from, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Our singer, Matt, grew up just over the border in Michigan. So back in the day, we said Michigan because he started the band, but we're purely Toledo for sure.
Yeah, we got it. I like that. I like that energy.
Yeah.
So, producer Brian, can you please update me on this? What is the distance from Toledo to Detroit and then Toledo to Cleveland? So everyone can kind of have an idea.
Yeah, Nick, fact check me on this if you need to, brother. But Toledo to Detroit, it's just about an hour, 60 miles.
Just about an hour.
No traffic. But Toledo to Cleveland's 2 hours, 133 miles.
You got it dead on, buddy.
Dead on. Yeah.
Confirmed.
So I
Confirmed.
asked, I was like, do you identify more with Detroit or Cleveland? And Nick, you said Detroit all the way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, growing up, we were in Detroit for shows like almost every weekend. So definitely identify more with Detroit. And I feel like Michigan hates Toledo, and the rest of Ohio hates Toledo as well. So we're just in this like weird purgatory.
Whoa. Okay. I didn't realize that Ohio hates Toledo.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Very, very familiar with the Michigan, Ohio beef.
Yeah.
But this kind of ties into what we were just talking about, because if Toledo's this weird little island, and I don't know if that's residual from the fact that Toledo used to be Michigan.
Yeah, this is the bombshell that I had to stop the conversation. I was like, we can't let this fire conversation go unrecorded. Dane, give us that Michigan, Ohio background. There was a war. There was some sort of conflict over Toledo. Please tell me.
So yeah, they do call it the Toledo War. It was a Cold War. There was no battle. There were no deaths. There was one injury. One man was stabbed. But essentially, it was an argument over territory. And you're gonna love this. The trade was Ohio gets Toledo, Michigan gets the Upper Peninsula.
Whoa. Yeah. So, I mean, how did that work? Did they what was the Upper Peninsula before? It wasn't part of Ohio, right?
I think it was. I think
Really?
it's, when you look at old maps where it's like there's territories and like they're not all connected, but it's like Ohio has this over here and this over here, and Virginia is 3 places. Like, I'm not exactly sure, but it's something like that.
Wow.
There was actually a discussion at one point about the University of Michigan being in Toledo.
Wow.
Back in these olden days.
This is fascinating. Guys, you're sending me down.
Yeah.
You're sending me down a Toledo, Michigan, Ohio.
We've got some sibling rivalry going on.
Okay.
For sure.
This is an amazing conversation for Wikipedia. I'm going to be diving into it. So Nick, we're here to talk about youth and obviously Toledo, but am I saying it right? How do you say it? Toledo?
Yeah.
Toledo.
Yeah, Toledo.
Okay, good. This is a record that is now just past 10 years old. How old were you when you started putting this record together?
I think that we were 18 when we started working on Youth, and when it came out, Matt and I were 19.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, really, really crazy.
Okay. Well, I want to get into some of the mechanicals and the background on it, but it's one of these conversations I have and think about, is that 10 years is like an indiscriminate amount of time. It's just like, but we mark things off in 10s and 5s and anniversaries and stuff, right? And thinking about where you were 10 years ago, as a band, musically, with the record, looking back, how do you feel about the record? Like, in this moment right now, where are you at on that record?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, if you asked me 3, 4, 5 years after the album came out, it's kind of the classic reaction to like your past work, where you kind of shy away from it and you resent it in some weird way. But then, a few years later, you just get less insecure as you get older. And at this point, it's a record that I'm, I actually have fun playing the songs now.
Yeah.
Which wasn't always true. And, I also just think for, 18-year-olds, pretty solid,
Yeah.
Not bummed at all. And it's cool that people still like it and connect with it. So I'm totally down. I'm back on board.
Well, I hope so, because this would be a really short podcast. You're like, it's all right. I don't know. I don't think I have much to say about it. Jeff, when you hear that that this record's like 10 years old, obviously it's a pretty notable release in the Run for Cover catalog. Did you know how young these dudes were? You knew these folks before they signed to Run for Cover. Talk about meeting them, talk about all that, and talk about the fact that, I mean, you're not an old man either, but these dudes were really young when this record came out, and it sounds well beyond their years, if that's kind of what I'm driving at here.
Yeah. I had been following them for a little while before we started working with them. I'm curious to ask you, Nick, if you feel differently about the music you made prior to Youth as you do Youth.
Yes, I think that music is pretty bad.
So that's a great box to unpack in a second. Keep going, Jeff.
I don't necessarily remember the first time we met. It might have been at that show in Cambridge on the Turnover tour.
That was the first time, yeah.
Yeah. So we hadn't really talked a ton, and I mean, we definitely met and hung out, but I don't think we really had spent a lot of time together or anything. But I was definitely aware of how young they were, and that was a huge motivator in wanting to work with them after hearing the stuff before Youth. It was just, I mean, it was very clear who the band was pulling from influence wise before Youth. But it was still a pretty solid effort all around. And it was very apparent that they were young and going to get significantly better pretty quickly, I think.
I mean, so that's and Jeff, we're staying here because you identified something that I think is tough for people to understand with music and with signing bands. And, Dane, you've seen this too. It's almost like this magic moment where you see what an artist is doing and they're working on things and it's like, oh, this is pretty good. But you can almost see that something more is coming. That's what Youth feels like to me in terms of Nick, full disclosure. I did some research. I listened to your music from before Youth too. And
great.
Well, what Jeff identified and said really eloquently is right. I don't know if you guys get credited enough for how competent you are prior to this, but then especially on Youth, like you guys are doing things musically that I think are well beyond an 18-year-old, and it's just sonically, it could come out today and feel fresh. You know what I mean? And that's something I think resonates. What was it, Jeff, when you heard their earlier material that made you think, okay, there's something more coming? And maybe it was just a gut feeling. Maybe it was just seeing the progression of things as it was. What was it that pulled you into Citizen?
I guess just knowing how young they were and how effortlessly they were like pulling from these influences, regardless of how obvious it was what they were. And I mean, I guess more so back in the day when we were talking about signing bands, it was almost always a question of like, this band's pretty good, but we know they're going to get better, because that's just the level we had to find bands at,
Yep.
But yeah, it was just, they were already so competent and young. That's generally like what we're looking for, or I mean, looking for specifically at that time, were bands who hadn't hit their peak yet, but obviously we're going to grow.
And
if I can give Jeff a little bit of gas on this, obviously the bands are making the music, but consistently, and particularly with Jeff, Citizen is a great example. But the number of times that Jeff has like shared music or come across an artist in a way that is just like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And, we're listening to their, what's already out, what they've released up to this point. And sometimes there's a, like his ability to identify exactly what he just said. The fact that like, I can tell that these people are like onto something, and like without fail, that's why time and time again, like the next record that comes out is just like, damn, he really knew. Like he knew before the band knew that they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's a gift. Jeff definitely has it. If to the listeners out there, if you haven't heard, Jeff's got pretty good ears. He's pretty good at this. So listen to him. Nick, Jeff knew you had youth in you, knew you had a lot more in you. Obviously, you guys have had such a long relationship now. Did you kind of know that you were going to hit what you did with youth in terms of prior to it? Did you kind of have an inkling, like sonically, musically, what you wanted to put together beyond what you had done already?
Well, I think with the early stuff too, like even before Youth, Citizen was a band that every time we wrote music, whether it was even just writing a song or, which at the time was just Matt and I getting together like at his mom's house. And everything we would do would sound different from the last thing we did. So I think that a lot of people perceive that kind of notion about Citizen to have started in like 2015,
Right,
that we
sure.
kind of abandon everything that came before. But we were kind of doing that already in high school.
Right.
Like the early demos that we did, and then we did like a little split with our friends. Then we did a 7-inch, and all of these things sounded completely different from one another. So I think there already was a spirit of like every time we got together, we had to level up or at the very least challenge ourselves to like do something that was different for us. And I think around the time we started writing Youth, this kind of realm of music was changing a lot, and I think was like leveling up in a pretty major way. And I think when Jeff reached out to us and we knew that an LP was going to come out on Run for Cover, it's just like an added challenge to level up more than we ever had.
Yeah.
I think that we just knew it had to be the best thing that we had done. And I don't know. I think we just challenged ourselves to do something different than we had done before. People kind of think of Youth as like the Citizen release, but at the time there were people that were bummed that it didn't sound like, the 7-inch. It's like we've kind of been bumming people out forever. So we just continued on that trend for
To date, right?
11
Right.
years
Yeah.
11 years since then, and that's kind of been our whole thing. And honestly I think that's why we're still a band.
Well, and that's honestly, it had me going in a place, because would you consider that kind of a misconception about your band, that it's like you're going different directions sonically on a whim, as opposed to, no, this is kind of an element of this band, that we do this, that we are very aware that we do this, and it's a challenge to ourselves.
Yeah, totally. I don't know. It's weird because people will ask about sonic changes, and you always feel kind of dorky saying that it like wasn't natural, and that like, oh no, we did try to do this other thing. But I mean, I just think genuinely that's why we're still having fun doing it. And I'm not sure we would if we were just, you know, I mean, I don't even know how much more we could do with the style that is Youth, you know.
Right.
So I
Well,
don't
it's
know, it's
sort of,
just
to me,
more fun how we've done it.
speaking directly, a lot of people look at a sound and say, you know, maybe it's a slow growth, maybe it's you did A and you're going to move to B, and maybe from B you go to D, you skip a step. But there's another way to look at it, and there's no hard and fast rules to music. And from what I see and what I hear when I listen to not just Youth but your catalog at large, is that you guys do records almost like statements, like, here it is, here's this, check it out, we hope you enjoy it, and it's not as if you couldn't say more. I guess you could, but you're choosing to use the same elements, and like, you guys have been doing this band since literally high school. And imagine trying to rewrite records that you wrote in high school. It would honestly, organic's the right word, because it would feel inorganic if you were just trying to recreate the same thing you were doing 10, 12, 15 years ago, right?
Yeah, totally. And you know, nobody actually wants that. You know, people think that they do, but they really really don't. If we were to, as you know, 30-year-old men write an album like Youth, we would just get roasted into oblivion. And I just can't have that. I can't have that.
Nick, I want to ask you an extension of the perception of this record now. You said, you know, you've come around to it in a new way. You did these 10-year shows. You're having fun playing them again, all this stuff. Part of that comes from the distance of like, you're able to look at this as like, wow, yeah, this is a thing we did. Like, how cool, we did this when we were 18, whatever. So you have that new flavor, but I'm curious, are there any songs or parts in particular that you're still really impressed by? Like when you're playing it or listening to it or something, and just be like, holy shit, like this rules. I can't believe this came out of such a young version of me. Or is it more just like nostalgia and it was cool at the time and you're enjoying it now?
No, there's stuff that I'm like, I cannot believe that 18-year-old me was capable of writing that.
Yeah.
I think specifically The Summer is a song that I'm still like, man, we kind of killed that shit. You know, it's like,
I think a lot of people feel that way.
it's still good. It's like kind of complex for, I think, like where I was at as like a musician at the time. And I also think that that song is probably, if there's any song in like the entire Citizen catalog, I think that that might be the one that feels the most collaborative between Matt and I. Like it just feels so like 50-50. And so I kind of love it for that reason too. It just really feels like both our styles coming together. And another song that I kind of feel that way about is the last song, Drawn Out. More
banger.
Matt, I just think Matt's melodies on that one are like very adult, and still I think some of his best melodies that he's ever written. And that's a pretty wild thing to say when you're like 30 looking back, and I'm like, wow, like there's this thing that Matt did when he was 19 that still like really really impresses me. And yeah, there's a lot of moments like that, you know. There, of course, there's things that you listen back on and I'm like, well, I certainly wouldn't do that now, or choose
Right.
these tones or whatever. And certainly I think wearing your influences on your sleeve is like a thing that as a young man you just want to sound like your favorite bands, you know, and you kind of shake that off over time. But overall, I'm just like, you know, it was a total accident. I think people kind of forget that Youth did not come out and amidst like Citizen being like a career band.
Right.
You know, we were in high school when we started working on it. We had no idea what we were doing, and it was just kind of an accident, and it changed our lives. And like, you know, I think if we had never done it, there's no way we would be still doing this, you know. So
Okay.
I'm proud of it.
This is a good spot because you gave so much. I feel like there's two plates worth of conversation right now. Dane, can you give us the mechanicals, all the info, all the dirty details of Citizen Youth before we dig back in? Because it's fun to set the stage like this.
Sure. Yeah, I know. So Youth was a Studio 4 record. This was your first time at Studio 4 with Will Yip, correct?
This was our second time.
Oh, what
we had done the Turnover split.
Right. Okay.
With Will.
So yeah, first LP, Studio 4 with Will Yip. It came out on June 11th, 2013. I don't actually have the hard dates on when this was recorded. Do you remember the date spread that you were recording this?
I believe it was recorded in February of 2013.
Cool.
Is that is that February of your senior year in high school?
This was the year after we graduated.
Okay. Jeez.
So
right,
we actually recorded it in February, and then we went on tour a little bit after that, and then it came out in between that and Warp Tour.
Perfect.
It came out while we were on Warp Tour.
And that's an extremely, I mean, recording in February and releasing it in June is pretty wild.
That's some 2013 style.
Absolutely. But hey, we got to get it out for Warp Tour, right?
Got to get it out for Warp Tour.
Got to do it.
Well, we hit the street date too.
Talk about this. Was it tight? What do you remember, Jeff?
I don't remember much else about it, but I remember that we had a successful first week of sales.
Oh yeah.
I remember not so much the lead up to hitting street, but that was a very notable pre-order experience for the office as a whole, because it was a larger pre-order. We were all in the office, and we were also doing YouTube stuff at the time. So we were like assembly line, train, packaging, all of these youth orders. So I have that very much baked into my mind, kicking off that summer, packing a bunch of Citizen records.
Didn't all the vinyl colors get messed up?
Yes. Yes. There was
you're picking a scab. Go dig in. Let's go.
At this point, we've had our fair share of vinyl issues. This was one of the first ones, and I don't remember the specifics of what this one was, if it was all of the records were the wrong variants or if they were just packed in the wrong boxes. It might have been that one, because I remember there was a time where we were having to like open a bunch of records just to look at all the variants, which might have been what led to the long assembly line, because we had to open all the records and look at them before we packaged them.
That sounds right from my memory, because I don't remember them actually being wrong, like amidst sales. I feel like you guys had to figure some stuff out.
Speaking about vinyl, Nick, I'm going to pose this to you, Jeff and Dane. If you guys know it, keep your mouths shut. But do you know how many vinyl copies there are pressed of Youth?
I honestly have no idea. I assume that the original pressing is on like, I don't know, 8th pressing, something like that.
It's on its 12th pressing now.
Okay,
so
12th pressing, and then we did a new version that I know we pressed a pretty wild amount of.
Yeah. This is all right. So Jeff or Dane, do you know the specific number or no?
I don't have it on the top of my head. No, I bet Brian might.
Producer Brian, can you hit us with this information?
Yeah. So I pulled up the calculator app and I was on Discogs earlier. We're just around 30K for the standard pressing, and then there's 5,000 on top with the 10-year.
So like 35,000 on vinyl. You could build a like tree fort with that many records. Jesus, good job.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's an impressive number, guys. So kudos.
Well, I remember when Youth hit 20,000 sales. I don't remember what year it was, but I remember that happening, and I remember that it was a pretty big deal. And there's bands out there now that probably think that's nothing, but that was pretty wild.
Yeah, no, it's time has a funny way to march with these things. But so with that, so Citizen Youth, we set the stage. You mentioned that there was some warmth. You mentioned in the songwriting process with you and Matt, and that's kind of my theme. I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about the band and the label and the record hitting 10 years. You were in a long-term relationship here with Run for Cover Records.
Absolutely.
And Citizen and this record. but a longer term relationship is you and Matt. So tell me a little bit about your friendship. Tell me about meeting, and then kind of what that relationship is like in terms of writing music together.
Yeah. So I actually met Matt at a sleepover when I was like 10 years old, I want to say.
Yeah.
We had we had a mutual friend, and he was like, he knew I played guitar, and he suggested inviting his friend over who played drums. And so I was like, cool. You know, as a young kid, you don't meet a ton of kids the same age that play music. So Matt came over, and I think he was wearing a Slipknot shirt, and he was just wild. Um, and so for the first few years of, well, longer than that. Well, yeah, I guess the first few years of our like musical friendship, uh, Matt would just play drums in our bands and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and then when he started Citizen, he had written a few songs and just asked me and Eric if we wanted to play, and we said sure, and that was kind of it. And then, you know, I had no idea that I'd still be doing it at this point.
Right.
Do you remember the first when he was just playing drums? Because he's an incredible singer, and I can't imagine, like, how long is he playing drums before he's like, oh, I sing too? Or the first time you hear him sing and he's like, I wrote some songs. Like, do you remember that transition, or the first time that seal was broken?
Yeah, well, he used to he actually used to be like obsessed as a kid with like making videos, like making home movies and like um fake music videos and like things like that. And he just understood, I don't know, like the technical side of things that I could never understand. Like he was 10 years old making like fully edited music videos. And I think he would do some like covers and stuff like that, and he would sing, but he just sounded like a little kid, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so then eventually um he just like had to sing because we had like parts that we needed somebody to sing. And he was like, well, I can just do it. And he sounded pretty good. And so he, I think, just realized like, oh, I think I can just like keep doing this. And then I specifically remember that at some point during like the early Citizen stuff, um, you know, he just definitely sounded like a pop punk singer, and he would randomly do this kind of other thing. And I remember just telling him like, dude, this is way better than,
Yeah.
you know, the other thing. And I don't know, I feel like he just kind of realized his forte
Yeah.
and locked in on it. And I think that, you know, going back to youth is kind of where that got locked in, where he was like, okay, this is like my style, a little more realized. And yeah, I don't exactly remember like the year in which he started transitioning from drummer to singer, but I do know that right now he's back obsessed with drums. So this is kind of just what he does. It's what he's
Yeah.
done ever since I've known him. He has been like obsessed with one thing, gets incredibly good at it, better than I could ever hope to be, and then goes to the next thing and like does the same thing, just gets incredibly good at it. And so he just does that. And so right now he's actually working on um drumming, and he's like, of course, just incredibly good again. I don't know. It's really bizarre.
That rules.
So thinking about this now, because you know we're talking about long time. You've been known this guy for a long time. Before you recorded Youth, or even during the process, let's think about during the process of recording it. Could you have imagined that 10 years later you'd still be doing it, and that this would essentially be one of the center points of your life, and that like did you even in your wildest dreams think, oh, this is going to lead to a career as a musician?
No, not really. I will say that when we were, I think as soon as we started recording Youth, we knew that people were going to like it. Like
Mm.
I felt like I kind of knew that there were like hits on the record, you know. But honestly at the time, being like an insecure kid, I wasn't so much concerned with that as I was being like a part of this like scene and being kind of uh a part of like a conversation. And looking back on that, like that's definitely a misstep, you know, doesn't really matter. And um but I definitely knew that Citizen fans, you know, the ones that existed at that time, which were not that many, um, I thought that they were going to like it. And I thought that there was a path forward for like, you know, I thought, okay, the tours that we're doing right now, I think that people are really going to like this. And, you know, we're about to do Warp Tour. I think people are going to like this. But I had no idea that it would go on even the next 4 years from that
Right.
point. And yeah, I mean, I think that at that point there was kind of a there's kind of a feeling that I've had in Citizen, like every 2 years I'm like, yeah, this is probably the last album. Like this is probably
Right.
the last thing we'll ever do. You know, there's been tours where I'm like, this is 100% the last Citizen tour.
Yeah, this is it.
And I've just been saying that for 12 years, you know. So I don't know. I'm sure I'm gonna say it this time and next time, and I'll just keep saying it till I'm like 45 and still playing an album called Youth.
Does that feeling come from the thought or insecurity that like this is the last time I'll have the chance to do this because it's going well and that's great right now? Or is it like, I don't know if I personally can still do this?
Yes.
Little of all.
Yeah, part of it is like, man, I want to like own a home and like have a baby, you know. And then the other part of it is like, you know, things change so rapidly, and if you can't like keep up, then I just I don't want to be some like old crusty dude, you know, trying to recapture the glory days. So it's kind of like as soon as we feel like we don't have anything to really do or say, then there's no doubt that we would just stop doing it. But like every year, every 2 years, it just so happens that like Matt will write a demo that I'm like, okay, well that just bought us 2 more years. Like,
Yeah.
We got
that's cool.
something here. Okay.
Yeah,
Hell
you know,
yeah.
we kind of figure out a path and just lock in on it. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? This is actually the best music we've ever made. So I guess we're just gonna keep doing it.
So is that, I mean, so you said something super interesting about when you were in the studio recording Youth, that you actually had a feeling like, oh, this this is a good, these are a couple great songs. People are going to like this. Was that a new feeling at that moment?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think that we just knew that it was a better version of Citizen at the time. And also like, you know, the people that had heard demos were like very, very excited about them. And I specifically remember showing Danny from Turnover the summer. I think they had like stayed at Matt's house when they were like touring or something, and we showed them a few of the songs. And I remember Danny texting me about it later and just being like, dude, that is gonna be humongous. And it's like little things like that at the time you're like, oh wow, You know, when
Yeah.
I see other people energized by what we're doing, then it just goes really far, you know. It still does.
Well, and you made a really again, I should be taking notes from what you're saying because you're saying really cool things in terms of the idea of the scene, what was going on at the time. You were a part of this world where there were a lot of bands bubbling up, not all doing the same thing, but I mean, for lack of a better term, with a similar spirit and in a similar age range. And that caring about being a part of that maybe doesn't matter so much, but that also perhaps feeling a part of that or getting acknowledged by your peers feels good and is kind of an encouraging sign. Is that kind of the flip side of wanting to be a part of a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And there were, you know, definitely there were people that were really, really supportive um from the get. And I think that I can shout out Tim Landers from Transit was like one of the earliest people that put on for Citizen, and I had done a few merch designs for them when I was in high school, and just was being annoying and like sent a link to Citizen, and I think that he actually put it in Jeff's ear, and I remember like a month later he was like, so did Jeff sign you guys yet? I was like, no, not yet, not yet. But yeah, Tim RIP was really, really um instrumental, I think, in getting us in Jeff's ear. um Dan from the Wonder Years was also an early person that when we first recorded some songs, he he was, you know, putting us up and kind of connecting us with certain people, and that was just all really cool, you know, as a high schooler, and these guys in these bands that are in this kind of small community at that point, you know, none of it was what it is now at that point. Yeah, it was just really exciting and a cool feeling, and I don't know, not everybody along the way was that cool, and so, you know, I still am really, really thankful for both those people.
So speaking of relationships, Dane, how far is Toledo, Ohio to Virginia Beach, Virginia?
Just under 700 miles, a short 10-hour drive.
So how did you guys form a relationship with Turnover?
um I think at the time there's like a few bands that were just, I mean, I guess like MySpace was kind of like the thing at the time. Um, and there was just a few bands that were like checking certain boxes. It was like, for lack of a better term, like run for cover style, or like run for
Yeah.
cover world of music. Uh, like a young band, you know, high school band, um, and kind of interested in touring. And so I think that me and Danny just started like flirting, and we talked about like, oh, we should play shows together. You know, we're both bands that are gaining a little traction doing what we're doing, and this would make sense. Um, and eventually we played a show together when we were still in high school. We played in Chicago together. It was the first time that either of us had played Chicago. Horrible show. And we just hit it off instantly. And then so we would kind of help each other. uh you know, they would hit us up like, oh, we have this show down here, if you guys can make it down. You know, like at the time we would straight up have to find a vehicle that could survive that trip.
Yeah.
And so we went down to like Richmond to play with them, and it just kind of became a romance that still still rages on. Like, you know, I mean, I was literally texting Danny today. So
Endless love.
it really is. And yeah, we just kind of stuck together. And I felt like there was kind of strength in doing things together at the time. I think that the first full US tour that we both did was like, you know, we still talk about like the Citizen Turnover tour as if we haven't toured together like 5 other times. but like that is the one. And I remember, you know, feeling like this was kind of a big deal because it was an insanely long tour. We played like every city. There was like 3 off days maybe, because there had to be. We just didn't even know that was like a thing. We didn't know you had to like rest at all. But we couldn't really afford to. We each got $100 a night,
Okay.
and well, if we were lucky, that was.
Yep,
But that was
yep.
that was the
That was the goal.
that was the high end. Yep. And yeah, it was Turnover, Citizen, and Light Years. And Pat from Light Years is our tour manager and still one of my best friends. And I just feel like that tour really, like, if I can like credit anything for like kind of being the pivotal moment and like kind of changing our lives, it was definitely that.
That tour was 44 shows long, for the record.
Yeah. That's yeah, you guys were on like that's some like we're train punks and we're just gigging gig to gig. Just gotta make it another couple hours to the next show.
Well, I think all bands need to do that. Like it, I feel like I look at that tour and I put so much respect on ourselves for that. Like being 18 and doing this totally insane tour and it being such a huge risk. You know, it's like I think that I like will put a little disrespect on bands that never had a such a raw tour like that. You know, I think you
Also,
just gotta do it.
on the touring front, I mean, this is 2012 when I was looking back at, because we were talking about Youth came out and then you did Warped Tour, which is also a famously long tour, kind of a whole different planet as far as touring goes. But on the number of shows in 2013 was close to 200. I think it was like 173 shows or something. A lot of those are Warped Tour, but you also did, I don't know if it was full US, but there was a tour before Warped Tour as well. Like you said, between recording and releasing the record, there was another tour to warm up for the full US tour.
Yeah, we did a tour with The Story So Far in spring of that year. Then we did Warped Tour. Then we did a tour with Polar Bear Club and Diamond Youth. And I feel like we did something else after that as well. We really like did not stop in 2013 at all. And it's funny because, you know, I think people remember Youth as being like, oh, it was like an overnight success or whatever. But I remember by the time that we did our first headline tour in 2014, people were like sick of us, and we had like totally burnt out Youth entirely. And I was like, nobody's ever going to want to hear this album ever again, because we played so many shows. We played the same cities over and over. Like this album has it's cashed, you know. And
Right.
so it's really funny to have thought that exactly 1 year after the album came out. And 10 years later we do a 10-year tour of it. Like, you know what I mean? It's just crazy.
So I had a question for you, because on top of, you know, being involved just a little bit in the music here, you did all the design for the record. Is that correct?
Yeah. Me and I had help from my brother Eric on the album cover, and I specifically remember it. And we still have like the poster board that we punched holes in to like stick flowers through. We still have that poster board just sitting in my mom's closet.
So tell me about the cover, because I think it's kind of an iconic cover at this point. It's really unique, and it hits these rules that I think about, where if that record is on the wall across the room from me, I know what it is.
Right.
And that's kind of amazing. So tell us about it, and where did the idea come from, the whole thing?
Yeah, I actually think that the thing that made me want to do this was like Sergeant Pepper's was like the Beatles spelled out in flowers.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, it was kind of as simple as that. And Eric and I just talked about how to do it. We didn't really know. I thought like, oh, let's just lay a bunch of flowers down and take a picture. And he was like, oh, we're gonna have to like stick it through something because of the stems. I don't know. And we just did it one night. It's funny because, not everybody is looking at the design file to youth, but I like look, it's like very sloppy, and like the edges of the letters are like pixely, and it's just so hilarious that this like kind of wonky like cover ended up being such a thing.
Yeah.
But I think Tumblr at the time was like the thing.
Yeah.
And the album cover kind of went viral on Tumblr. And so I think that for a long time there were a lot of people that knew the album cover but had never heard the album. And I think that is one thing that made the album so big, because it was just a recognizable cover, kind of easy to identify.
Yes. I mean, it's like it's not necessarily a secret, but it's certainly a cheat code that if your record stands out, it's going to help the whole thing. And then, I mean, look, there's also this meta thing where, the record's called Youth. You guys were young, duh. Some of the lyrical content is hitting on some interesting topics. This, it's almost like rote to say coming of age, but you said it. It would feel inauthentic if you were writing these songs at 30. But at 18, it's where you're at,
It'd be alarming.
Yeah. That's how I feel about a lot of these things. It's like, when you start looking up the ages for people, you're like, wait, how old were the Descendants when they wrote this record? What?
Yeah. Yeah. As a lifelong Blink-182 fan, I struggle with this often.
That's right. Don't look too deep into it. But there's this weird meta feeling to the record cover kind of having this iconic feel, these flowers. It all really works well together. Did it feel that cohesion, or was it kind of happy accident when you look back at it? Or because musically, there's this huge amount of growth. You identified it with Matt's vocals. He came into his own in this really amazing way on the record. The art, everything kind of comes together. Happy accident, or did it feel like there was an intentionality to some of it?
I think everything at the time was a happy accident. Like we really did not know what we were doing. And if I can go back to something that Dane asked me earlier about, are there any things that even looking back on, I'm really proud of? Honestly, the art is a huge one, because I don't think it's like the best thing I've ever made or whatever. Like I've also come into my own, but it still is the only album cover that I think I would describe as like iconic, and for a 19-year-old to have done that, especially when I remember like the deadline for art and everything, like mix, everything was like a week after we left the studio. So I got home and had to just like make something. And so Eric and I are like, no, I don't know, flowers, and we just did it. And out of that came this like album cover that incidentally became such a thing, for better or for worse. And so looking back, I'm still really like proud of even being able to do that as like a kid. Like that's pretty crazy.
So again, we're going to these things. You guys were young. You toured like crazy on this record. A lot of happy accidents, but a lot of things that felt like they were coming together all at once. Are there any things, if you could go back to that time, that you would do over or change?
I wouldn't say so. I think at the time we definitely felt like we felt kind of trapped. I think we were trying to say like, we're not a pop punk band. We're not a pop punk band. And, I think eventually that faded. But, so if you asked 19-year-old me, 20-year-old me, I would say there's all these things I'm frustrated by. And, I think a big thing was not being used to people having opinions on us. People that didn't like the record, it's like we saw like every comment, every tweet, whatever,
Right.
and really like took it to heart because we were just kids, and we were like, man, this guy's talking shit about us. Like we couldn't even believe that.
Yeah, did
Um,
that hit you in a way, huh?
yeah, for sure. We were just like insecure kids, so that like meant a lot to us at the time. Um but at this point, when I'm like literally doing this interview while I'm on tour, um I'm like, wow, no, like definitely would not change anything. I mean, it's like given us the ability to still do this. And it's still me, Matt, and Eric just playing music together. Like that's pretty incredible and pretty rare. We're pretty lucky to do it.
So, yeah, absolutely, Jeff. This is a long relationship for you. You and Citizen, you and Run for Cover and Citizen. Uh, how does it feel getting the opportunity to work with them and see as they evolve, see as they grow, and how that feels together? And Nick, I'm going to pose the same question to you and flip, but it's kind of amazing because both Citizen and Run for Cover have continued to grow and evolve, but have still found a way to be together. It's like a marriage, you know what I mean? There's ups, there's downs, it's all good, but you're in together. So what's that like for you, Jeff?
It's pretty much like the ideal situation for a record label, I think. I think probably technically Citizen has been with the label the longest. We signed Citizen and Turnover pretty much at the same time, but I was following Citizen first and kind of knew that they were going to be a part of what we were doing first. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome to see a band, put out 5 or 6 LPs that are all pretty different and special in their own right, all on the same label, is also something that's pretty rare. And
Yeah.
there has been ups and downs for sure, but there hasn't really been any serious downs in our relationship. So yeah, I feel incredibly lucky, and I would imagine everybody else at the label feels the same.
Yeah. Nick, same to you. You guys have been with Run for Cover since before youth.
Yeah.
What has kept it there? What's kept the love alive?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that if there's any relationship for Citizen that there's been like no issues at all, it's with Run for Cover. I mean, in the first place, going back to 2012, yeah, I think, yeah, 2012. Um, it was, Run for Cover was the only label that we wanted to be on. It was the only place that we really wanted um our music to live. And so when it happened, it was kind of a dream come true. And then I just think that we've both kind of grown together, and Run for Cover, has had a million kind of iconic releases for this realm of music since then. And
these guys can't say it, but yes, I can say it. Yes, that's true.
for sure, and it's just cool. It just, I really like that we're able to work with our friends. I feel like that, Citizen has had the same, pretty much our whole crew has been like the same forever. We've had the same manager, the same booking agent, the same label, and it just feels good that way,
Yeah.
So many people in music are just like screwed over, and so to be able to do it with the bros, that's pretty sick. So,
If I may, of course we're all bros, but you also
The segue,
Of
you might as well be
course.
on two wheels rolling in like that. That's amazing. Good on you.
Dang.
Of course we're all bros, but I mean, we've talked about a lot about you and Matt's budding relationship with music and everything, but you also play in a band with your literal bro, your brother Eric. And not that
Yeah.
you're the
Go ahead and tell me about the first time you met Eric.
and not that you're the first siblings to ever be in a band or anything, but as we've seen, sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. As somebody who also has siblings, I can't imagine what it feels like to be like so entwined with your sibling for like, pretty much everything you do in your life. So obviously you two are pretty close and have loved doing the band this whole time. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to run through your thoughts and feelings and going on this adventure with your brother, as well as your friends.
Yeah, I mean, well, Eric's my best friend, so it really is kind of just like anyone else, where he's kind of my shelter when things are like bad, and then other times we just straight up want to kill each other, and that just works. It's like we get really mad at each other, but it's like, okay, I'll see you in 15 minutes. You know what I mean? Like, you can't do anything about it. We're gonna be stuck together forever, so you just get over things. And it's really good to have one person in the band that you have that relationship with, because all it takes is like one really bad kind of situation with somebody to just blow up, and bands crumble. And I think that's definitely a huge reason why we still have so much fun doing this, is that, like, I've got somebody that if tour is really grating or whatever, having a bad day, it's like me and Eric can just go get dinner or whatever. And and then if we have fights, it doesn't mean anything. It's over instantly. And if anybody else tries to jump in, we just team up on them.
Do you know what you're
awesome.
trying to get in the middle of here? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way. I honestly think that like every band should be like sibling based. And it's funny because something about like our world and just like bands that we're friends with, there are a ton of sibling bands. I don't know what it is, but I mean, Turnover is another brother band, and Title Fight.
Yep.
And I don't know, like our guitarist Mason, him and his brother were in a band together when we met. Basement. Like, it really is kind of crazy.
This is the key, folks. This is the key.
You just spilled
your
the
siblings.
secret sauce. You just spilled the secret sauce. Jeff just looks at the band list and goes, "Are any of them related?" Oh, here we go. That's
Jeff's
it.
like, shut up, dude. Nobody else can know this.
Brian, key the timestamp here. We're gonna need to clip that part, so can't give out industry secrets. So Nick, I think we're gonna start wrapping up here, but I did have a few questions for you. More really, I'd like you to give some advice for the youth. I think there's people who are listening to this who are in bands, maybe want to start bands, have recording projects, what have you. So I hope you do you feel comfortable giving some advice for the youth?
I'll give it my best shot.
Okay. Because you've had some really good gems. Tell the youth how to survive touring and being in a touring band for as long as you have.
Yeah, honestly, just try and have fun. That's all that we do. We've played some of the worst shows you could ever imagine playing, and you just got to get through it and like find a way to have fun. I think, remembering some of the shows on that early the Citizen Turnover Light Years tour, like we played shows that 3 people were at, but then like the whole squad would like go skate the parking lot or whatever. You just have to not let that like crush you, because it doesn't matter. You will play amazing shows, you'll play bad shows. We still play shows that we get off stage and are like, woof, all right, that sucked.
See, that's good for people to hear.
But then we just like go play code. Yeah, then we just like go play code names together or something, and it's totally fine.
All right.
This is just what we do.
What was fun in 2013 versus what is fun today in 2024? Any difference, or is it the same?
I think that, well, what was really cool in 2013 was like, we were like, dude, there were 50 people at this show. That's amazing.
Yep.
And in 2024, if there were 50 people at our show, I would never show my face again.
Yeah, that would be an interesting citizen show in 2024. All right, back to the advice. Handling creativity and songwriting with the amount of scrutiny you can get because it's so visible. What is your advice for people?
I think if you start from an early point in your songwriting, doing exactly what you want and like not caring what people expect or want, you will develop that relationship with people that they know they're never going to get what they want, and they'll get hopefully what they need, and I think that is like the best thing that Citizen ever could have done, was to follow up Youth with an album that literally threw out everything that people liked about the band and liked about Youth, because it established something where it's like, people know. It's like, you can't be disappointed, because you'd be insane to expect the same record twice, So I think the best thing you can do is just to be kind of unpredictable and to let people know exactly what your intentions are, as early as you can. And I think that just helped, that's not to say we don't care about what people think, because we certainly do, but I think that's helped a lot. And I think that makes people kind of stick with us, and even if they don't necessarily vibe with the record, almost every person on planet Earth hated the follow-up to Youth. And now I see people that are like, this is the best one easily. Like, you're insane if you don't think this is the best Citizen record. And, I don't know if they are just saying that and want to believe it, but, it's like, I'm really proud of the way that we were able to kind of start taking risks even at an early point when, we had kind of built something that there was a lot to risk at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that bands need to take note, keep things fresh, and nobody wants to hear the same shit over and over. Nobody.
That's right. What advice would you give to people who said, I heard Youth by Citizen, and then I heard more Citizen, I really enjoy the band? What are some other bands or records that you would point people to? Like, okay, if you like this, go check these out also.
Well, if you like Youth, I would suggest a band called Title Fight.
Oh, okay, sure. All right, yeah.
That's probably the biggest one. If you like,
Mhm.
I could probably go through each album and say, hey, if you like this record, here's the exact band we were ripping off. So you can just go and actually here's the record specifically.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think that if you like Citizen, like probably the best thing to listen to is like our friends bands, and honestly other Run for Cover bands. Like that's probably, even though I don't think Citizen sounds like any other Run for Cover band, I still think that there is a spirit that if if you like this, you're probably going to find things to love about this other stuff. So I'll plug the label as a whole.
Look at that. Look at that. What a guy. All right. And the
Thanks,
final,
dude.
the final advice. Thank you, producer Brian. If someone was coming through Toledo, Ohio, where would they go to eat? Where should they go to eat?
Oh man. All right. Well,
I see. I know when there's a pause, when there's an oh man and a pause, that means this is the one he's got to give. The other answers, he was just like, all right, here we go. This one he has to give serious thought to. So, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to take notes here.
This one I'm passionate about. Well, my favorite place to eat in Toledo is a 102-year-old steakhouse called Mancy's. I feel like I may have been there with Jeff before.
I don't think so.
We've gone to a few spots.
Whoa.
But it is, if it was in any big city, it would be like written about extensively. And it's kind of our like best kept secret, but it's incredible.
We'll bleep it out.
I ate there like two days before we left.
I just Googled it. I have been there.
Okay, so
Okay,
so
yep.
so just as a note here, it's got a 4.7 out of 5 on Google reviews. That's pretty good. That's out of
Not bad.
2,458 reviews. That's outrageous.
Not bad at all.
Yeah. All right.
It's
We
like
got
the
it like that.
It's the highest a score can be before you start being like, this is fake. These aren't real
Yeah,
reviews.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
This is
So
amazing.
that's my number one, but
Okay.
probably our most iconic place is Tony Paco's. It's a hot dog place / Hungarian restaurant that that celebrities sign hot dog buns and they hang them up all over the wall. It's a place that Toledoans love. I have definitely heard some things from like Citizen fans that were in town for a show that were like, why did you make me go here? But I mean, I think it's incredible. And yeah, it's iconic from back in the day, way back in the day. A Toledo actor named Jamie Farr was on the show MASH. And he put on for Tony Paco's on the show, and he would wear like Mud Hens gear on the show and stuff like that. So it kind of got big from that. And then the first hot dog bun to ever be signed and put up on the wall was Burt Reynolds. So pretty sweet. And now it's like every president and every kind of celebrity that you could ever imagine has signed a hot dog bun. And Citizen actually did sign a hot dog bun, and they never hung it up.
I was gonna ask.
I think they threw it away instantly. But
Well,
you know.
Tony Pacos, this is our plea to you.
Hang the bun.
Hang the
Hang
bun.
the bun, Tony.
Hang the bun.
Go to Toledo. Eat at Mancy's. Listen to Youth.
It's as easy as that.
Simple as.
Wow, what an episode of the Run for Cover podcast. Thank you to Nick from Citizen for joining us. You can listen to Youth, Calling the Dogs, As You Please, Everybody's Going to Heaven, Life in Your Glass World, all those fine releases, anywhere you get your Run for Cover records, folks. You can stay connected with all things RFC on our Instagram, on our YouTube, on our website, runforcoverrecords.com, and stay subscribed to the RFC Pod, as we're going to be dropping new episodes routinely on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you're listening, we'll be there. Take care.